there is still a little bit of a stigma, right? Like it's really not that cool to be like the person with like their Perrier, like, oh yeah, I'm having loads of fun over here, and I think I know people are listening to this thinking, but what happens to relationships? Do you have to tell people that you're not drinking? Like, okay, so Spencer's so far ahead, he's already like, you got it figured out, but I'm playing with it. Like, can I ask how it affected your relationships when you got started, like when you gave up drinking?
I became a better person. I became more fun. I became more engaged. I became a better listener. I became, all kinds of stuff. So I became different in so many positive ways that it affected my friends and family positively. Right. So, it wasn't like, and also, one thing I would say to anyone who has a friend or, I suspect it wouldn't be a family member, but a friend that is against you not drinking, right? Or urging you to drink. It's I don't mind saying this. It's a slightly juvenile thing to be pushing your friend to drink alcohol. And I think it's actually less common nowadays. And I think if you're taking the decision not to drink, whether it be for 3 hours or 3 days or 3 weeks, ordinarily people, respect that, I think. Unless, of course, you have a very soft arm that is very easily twisted and your friends know that they can twist you into having a drink. But I think you need to want to moderate your alcohol. You need to want to give up drinking. I think if you're, doing it for somebody else or whatever, it's unlikely. It's not necessarily the alcohol that is the issue. It's the habit. It's the trend of, it's 5 p.m. on a Friday. Like I always go for drinks after work now. So that's what I'm going to do. Right. So it's kind of, you'll very rarely find, of course, outside of alcoholism, you'll very rarely find, people who have to be drinking, so it's usually a conscious choice, whether you drink or not. And I think, not drinking is becoming alarmingly common. The Telegraph reported the other day that 1 in 3 pub visits are non-alcoholic now in the UK.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. So, okay. So so everyone was supportive in your life, apart from maybe, I don't know if there are a couple of friends, like you said, often it's not family because they always want the best for you, but your relationships improved.
Yeah. But I also think, people progress through lives at different rates and in different stages. Yeah. So it's not uncommon that your best friend when you're 20 isn't your best friend anymore when you're 30, right? I just think people place a lot of emphasis on prior relationships, how you were when you were a teenager. That's a lifetime ago for me. Yeah. And people grow and evolve at different rates, and I think a lot of the time and in great relationships, you can evolve together. Like my wife and I, when we met, are not the same people now as when we met. We both have enormous amounts, more responsibility. We're both far further ahead with our careers, we're both, far more serious people than we were when we met. And we've grown together, right? And I think, not to sound horrible, but if you have a friend who's simply, not with you or not moving at the same pace as you can ice that relationship, right? There's no need to carry people around with you or be carried around by people. I think people should be themselves and do what they think is right. And, that goes for drinking alcohol. If you want to drink to excess every day, do it. Nobody's stopping you. But
there's no law against it. Yes. And yet when a person changes, I find, Spence, like whenever I observe someone who gives up drinking or who's just maybe never been a non-drinker, I think people often secretly envy them.
Yeah.
And they're like, so do they not have any social anxiety? Are they just so comfortable showing up at an event? Wait, what do they do on a Saturday? Like what happens? Yeah. Like what happens at 6 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon? Like
there is always the turning point in the night where the sober person prevails. Always. So like, well, no, well, like that's just my opinion, right? So, so please, whoever's listening to this, please take my opinions as my own, right? I'm not preaching that this is right or wrong, but in my opinion, of course, there are times, right, when you go to a cool party and everyone's drinking, champagne or whatever, and everyone's dressed up, and you're kind of stood there with your non-alcoholic whatever or non-alcoholic beer, and you feel like, it would be fun to get involved, and there's that little period, and it is short. where you feel like you could be on the wrong side of it. And then the night progresses and people, drink more and more, and the stories get worse and worse. And the makeup, gets more and more smeared, and the eyelashes start coming off. And all of a sudden, you're talking to someone that is making absolutely no sense at all, and you just think, I'm delighted with my decision not to have drank tonight, and it happened to me recently we were in Ireland. My wife has a podcast with me, but she also has a podcast with one of her comedian friends. And they sold out this, they did this huge live podcast at Electric Picnic. And they had 8,000 people watching in a tent and 3,000 people outside the tent. And it was amazing. And we went with a big crew of people, and lots of people decided to drink very heavily, for the entire day. And it didn't go so well for them. And lots of people didn't drink at all. And we had an awesome time. And we watched the Arctic Monkeys and Snow Patrol, and sober, completely sober. But it was great. I remember all of it. It was an awesome experience. I took loads of great photos. I went home and had a good night's sleep. And then the following morning we were doing whatever, and I think people associate drinking alcohol with having fun, which I think is inherently incorrect, right? Nobody thinks, I don't believe, that being drunk is fun. Being drunk and having gone too far is not fun. It never has been fun. Being hungover is not fun. Being sick is not fun. I think in that first 2-3 drinks is quite fun, right? Everyone can agree that that's quite fun. The 4th, 5th, and 6th is usually not that fun, right? And you never ever wake up ever saying, I wish I drank more alcohol last night. Nobody's ever said that in the history of the world. Oh, I feel a bit hungover. I wish I felt more hungover. No one's ever said that, right? So I just feel that, if people could disassociate the alcohol consumption with the fun and understand that you can have a great time without drinking and also not have to recover the following day, it's quite a big hurdle for people to clear. But once you clear it, it's just really obvious.